Okay, we have breaking news from an Oshawa, Ontario courthouse. Michael Theriault, an off-duty officer, has been found guilty of assaulting Black teenager Dafonte Miller. Theriault's brother, Christian, has been found not guilty on the two charges of obstructing justice. They were found not guilty. A warning that some viewers may find the visuals in this story disturbing. The off-duty Toronto police officer and his brother were accused of beating Miller in December 2016. The attack left Miller blind in one eye. Miller testified he was beaten with a pipe in an unprovoked attack. The defense alleged Miller and his friends were breaking into cars that night and that Miller started the altercation. Stay tuned to CTV News Channel for more details on this developing story. But right now, with more, I'm joined by criminal defense lawyer Mustafa Sheikh. He joins me now from Toronto. And thank you for joining us. So we've got guilty, at least that Theriault is guilty. His brother is not guilty on obstruction. Tell me what your thoughts are.
I think it's definitely a decision that's going to swing both ways. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who find that this decision just doesn't make too much sense, in the sense that obviously the judge in this case had made a few really big sort of proclamations, in the sense where he was clear that he did believe that both the officers in one way or another were deceitful, were sort of misleading. He didn't really trust their full testimony. In addition, he sort of felt that the officers went above and beyond in regards to the self-defense that is available in these circumstances. So I think, there was definitely some messages that came out of that judgment that sort of, if you're an average viewer who doesn't really have a legal background and understanding on how the law works, you would sort of be confused, wondering, okay, then how do you not find these individuals guilty for the more serious offense of aggravated assault? But at the same time, I think the judge does an excellent job in explaining that the threshold for finding somebody guilty for aggravated assault, it's not just speculation or probabilities. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. And that is a very, very high threshold. And I think when you look at the facts and when you look at the situation and when you look at the parties involved, I ultimately think the judge, listening to his sentencing, came to the right decision.
Okay, so let me ask you about that, and just a quick correction. So the Theriault was the off-duty police officer. His brother was not an officer. Let me ask you about the difficulty in this for a number of different reasons, not the least of which is the two very, very different stories on behalf of Theriault and his brother, and also Miller, but also because there was other evidence that was presented on behalf of a witness, and the judge would then have to decide which story, provided the most evidence and that was, beyond a reasonable doubt, as it were. Do you think that this case may have hinged on that witness?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you have an independent witness, naturally they provide an unbiased sort of perspective on what they saw. But at the same time, it's the judge's job, especially when it comes to sentencing and when it comes to sort of finding these type of verdicts of guilt. Nothing sort of works in a vacuum. So it's very hard to say. I believe the independent witness provided a crucial insight and a perspective on what they sort of observed to happen. But at the same time, that's what makes this judgment so great, because Justice DeLuca does an excellent job sort of explaining the strengths and weaknesses and sort of captures everything from start till finish. Yes, you have an independent witness who's suggesting that this is what they obviously saw, but that's coupled with the fact that you had Mr. Miller who had to testify, you had the officer who had to testify, and then you had his brother who had to testify, and then didn't testify, but then you sort of have to balance those narratives and take everything from it and see what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And I think ultimately the decision is based on, looking at everything collectively and coming to the conclusion that, yes, an assault occurred, but there wasn't enough. Sorry? Sorry, I don't know if we got disconnected there. Hello?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's okay. There's just a little bit of a delay with us talking back and forth. So we apologize for that. But let me ask you this. What kind of an impact do you think this case could have on criminal justice in Canada, or cases going forward?
It's huge, right? I think that's actually the $1 million question right now that everybody's looking at this case for. They're looking for some guidance, and I think naturally speaking, there's a lot of minority groups, and I think the popular the vulnerable groups in particular. We've seen the Black Lives movement across the globe. We've seen how these individuals have been disenfranchised, they've been targeted, and I think this is sort of this decision is going to have a ripple effect. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are unhappy because ultimately you have this young man who was brutally beaten and lost one of his eyes, and that's something that can't be taken back. I mean, those are injuries that are going to be forever foregoing, and I think it's also going to sort of create a further distrust in the sense that a lot of people are going to sort of be scratching their heads wondering, what is it going to take to sort of hold these officers who have so much power accountable to the people that they're supposed to be serving and protecting. And I think this is going to definitely create a ripple effect in that way, most definitely.